Welcome to Field of Screams podcast. Today we'll be talking about The Medium. We've been trying to branch out and cover some non-English horror movies, just because it's interesting to see what's going on. And we've covered Incantation, we've covered The Wailing, and someone recommended this movie, and I watched the trailer and I'm like, oh, this looks pretty freaky. And to my surprise, it's by the same exact director who made The Wailing. Now I've been wanting to cover Incantation because that movie, it legitly freaked me out. And after that, whenever I was watching The Wailing, I kept hearing all these good things about it. It's won all these different awards, and I was like, oh man, what if this blows Incantation out of the water? And as I watched it, it was a good movie. It had a superb ending. But I felt like it was it was kind of a weird movie. There were some parts that were comedic and then some parts were very serious. And it had its freaky parts in the movie. But to me, I don't want to say it was underwhelming because I enjoyed watching it. But it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Now, as I sat down for this movie, I'm going to be honest, this movie was exactly what I was expecting The Wailing to be. You want to talk about unnerving. This movie had a treasure chest full of unnerving moments. And I was very, very impressed with this movie. Literally, there's different sections of this movie that kind of just remind me of elements of classic horror movies, of those who watch a lot of horror movies. There's sections that remind me of The Exorcist. There's sections that remind me of Paranormal Activity. There's sections that remind me of Wreck or Quarantine. All of it very well done. I was very impressed with this movie, so I definitely wanted to cover it. I think I mentioned covering it last episode, but after watching it, I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this, because it was so impressive, and it's very under the radar. I feel like no one really talks about it unless you go into forums like the subreddit Found Footage on Reddit. Little shout out for them. They've mentioned it a couple times, and I finally got around to watching it. Very worth watching. Now I'm going to be getting into spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, make sure you watch this, because again, it's so worth watching, especially if you want to watch something that just freaks you out at night. Wait till it gets dark out, put this on, and you'll have a good time, I promise. It is disturbing. Alright, let's get into spoilers. So we open up, we're in Thailand, and this documentary crew, they go to Thailand because they want to cover different shamans, they want to cover different religions, and they stumble upon the shaman named Nim. Nim is a shaman for the religion Bayan. And again, when you watch movies like this, especially as someone who just lives in, the Midwest of the U.S., it's always interesting just seeing different cultures and different aspects. I'm guessing not every bit of life in Thailand is like this, but it's just an interesting premise, and it's very different than the life that I live. And this is a beautifully shot movie, especially the beginning when they're establishing they're a documentary crew. You get this just scenery of the forest that belongs in the area, everything just so well done. And when you get to Nim, she talks about how she talks to people. She tries to heal them spiritually. The film crew even asks her, if someone's physically sick, can you help heal them? And she's just like, nah, you need to go to the doctor. While getting background of the information and the religion of Bayan, we stumble upon her niece named Mink. And if there's any character's name that you're going to memorize by the end of this movie, it's going to be Mink's, because they say it 235 times throughout this film. You just will not forget the name Mink. Even there was a group of friends that I watched this with because we all wanted something scary. I found this after someone recommended it. Watched a trailer. I'm like, guys, this looks freaky. And a little bit in the beginning when stuff's going on with Mink and the character's like, Mink, hey Mink. And it's we were just joking around. Even after we watched the movie, we all enjoyed it. We just had the inside joke of going, Mink. I don't know, just a little funny. But Mink is her young niece, and she's kind of experiencing these weird side effects. And Nim believes that it is Bayan who is trying to tell her that she is going to be the next shaman for the religion of Bayan. Nim had to go through it when she was younger, so she kind of recognizes this. Now, these weird side effects, they are very small, but they're yet effective. There's one night where Mink is talking to a blind lady. And I think the blind lady like passes away the very next morning, like that. It's like, okay, something's going on with Mink. Like, what are we doing here? And even after that, she's like in a trance, and then she snaps out of it. She's behaving just very, very weird. And as it's going, the film crew's kind of like, okay, Noom's cool and all. But let's follow around this Mink girl. We think we might catch some interesting stuff if we follow her around. So the girl who plays Mink, she deserves an Academy Award for what she does, because this girl, like when you first meet her, she has a very standard sit at the desk type job. And they're interviewing her and she goes, "Oh, I love my job. It might be a little boring, but I'm helping people and that's what I want to do." And as she's talking, like she seems like just a very nice young lady. She's very pretty. And like as it's going, it's like, oh, she seems nice. But then they start interviewing her friends, and her friends are like, "Listen, Mink's been doing some weird stuff lately." And you're like, "Oh God, like what's Mink doing?" And it shows that she starts acting like a kid. She's going to stores. She's trying to put on like these little shoes that belong to children. She's giggling like a little kid, which is unsettling in itself. And she literally goes to a playground where like little kids are playing, and she's like going down the slide giggling. And there's literally like a 4 or 5-year-old child that she pushes into a wall. And man, like the way she pushes him, like she hits him like a NFL linebacker, like smashes him into a wall. And as you watch it, I'm just kind of like, ooh, like I don't know what the labor laws in this country are when it comes to filming, but that push looked really, really hard. And like as she like pushed the kid, she's like giggling, and then like another kid's going, it's like, oh no, don't do it again. And she pushes the second kid a little lighter. But still, that first kid, it's like, what parent signed off on this kid doing this role? Like, I just imagine like just some careless parents that are like, yep, he's going to be a stuntman one day. He better get used to it. Like getting shoved into walls and stuff. Which is really unfortunate when you talk about child actors in Hollywood. There was some guy who had a prank show, and I cannot remember his name. It might have been the guy who did Borat. But I remember he disguised himself as like a Hollywood producer, and he was having these parents bring in these child actors. And I remember there was this one parent, he's talking to them, and he goes, "Listen, for this kid, she's going to be working with bees, and they're probably going to sting her. Is that okay?" And the parent goes, "Oh yeah, like she handles bees really well." And he goes, "Oh, really? Like, how old is she again?" And the parent's like, 4 years old. Like, she'll handle a bee no problem. Like, this little girl's really blue collar. And, like, as I was watching it, like, you just kind of lose all hope for her humanity. It's like, my God, like, what's wrong with people? But anyways, so Mink starts getting more and more reckless. She starts drinking, and the film crew's just following her around. Like, this girl's just stumbling around in dark streets, and the film crew's like, I don't know, just follow her. Like, we'll see where she goes. And then, like, a few times, like, she goes into her workplace, like, at night where no one's there, and she, like, passes out on the bench. She's behaving really weird. Her boss is, like, waking her up as everyone's arriving in the morning, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, you're just sleeping here." And then there's like blood running down her leg, and everyone's just kind of like staring at her, which I don't know how I would handle that as a guy boss. Like, I guess you'd have to tell the girl, like, you don't want her walking around all day with like that. She does deserve to know. You could probably be like, "Hey, look, your leg, like, right, you need to go to the bathroom." But I don't know, that would be a little awkward. But even on normal days when she's at work, like, she'll literally just run off and start screaming in the restroom, and the film crew's like scrambling after her. And those like very small parts are like a little unsettling as it goes. Like, the beginning just feels like a standard like documentary, and you're watching someone just unravel. But eventually, like, the boss walks out and he goes, "Mink, gather your stuff, you're fired." And it's kind of like, oh, like, that was sudden. Now, granted, you know, if you're sleeping at your workplace and they're finding you and you're running to the bathroom screaming, like, that's probably a fireable offense. But it, like, I don't know. I was kind of like, you would think, I wouldn't expect them to look after her mental health, but it just felt very sudden. But then, like, she tries to go back to work, and they literally get security, and they're like, no, get her out of here. And, like, the film crew goes up to the boss, and they're like, hey, why'd you fire her? And he's like, oh, follow me. And, like, instantly he pulls up these tapes, and, like, Mink was taking random dudes into the workplace and just having sex in various positions, like, and like the way it shows it, like, it's not kind of like, oh, look how hot this is, like, it's like fast forwarded clips, like, cutting from one after another, and it's just very I've used the word unsettling a lot, but like in a way, like, it's just the sudden nudity, the sudden image of her doing this, and it just seems very out of character for her, especially when you meet her in the beginning. But again, she's unraveling. So by this point, when she's fired and you find out what she's doing with all these guys in the workplace, Mink's mom's a little worried. So she's like, okay, we need to figure this out. Now, Mink's mom and Nim is her aunt, who is the sister of Mink's mom. That makes sense. They're at odds religiously, because Mink's mom is a Christian. The church she goes to has a big purple neon cross, which looked very cool. And of course Nim, she is the shaman for Bayan. And Mink's mom does not believe in Bayan. Neither does Mink. She says that in the beginning of the film. So seeing these two kind of religions like clashing, like that was kind of interesting to see. But they're trying to like figure out like what's going on, and eventually Mink's mom's like, listen, if Bayan is coming for Mink, maybe we should just try to do like a ceremony to speed up the process. Like, she is ruining her life. So she does like this random seance for Mink. Nim shows up and she's not happy. She's like, no, you can't just do random ceremonies like this. And like the ceremony goes wrong. Mink grabs one of the film crew's cameras, like bludgeons her mom's face with it, then runs off, and she's lost for a little bit. Like, they can't find her. And like throughout all of this, like Mink's mom and Nim, they're like at each other's throats, but they're like super worried. And Nim at first was like, I'm not gonna help. But then she goes, you know what? I am gonna help, because that's my niece. I forgot. So she's like trying to help out. She's doing like these ceremonies, trying to find her. And eventually, once they do find Mink, I'm jumping the gun here. Look at my notes. There is one scene that was like really good, but like it kind of, I don't want to say it made me laugh, but Mink is like walking around and she goes to like where the Temple of Bayan is. And she turns the corner and she does this blood curdling scream. And when she does this, I was like, oh my God, what did Mink do? And I'm expecting to see like the bodies of like 30 villagers just like carved up, disemboweled, something disturbing. And then it just shows the statue of Bayan. Mink decapitated the statue, and the statue's like head is just sitting there. And that's what caused Nim to get super upset. So, that's happening. And then there's even a good discussion, and it's important later. But Mink's mom and Nim, they sit down and talk, and Mink's mom's like, listen, have you ever seen Bayan? And Mink's mom, or Nim's like, no. And she goes, well, how do you know he's real? Or she's real? I think it's a female god. And Nim just kind of describes it. She goes, well, it's a faith thing. Like, I can feel it. And Mink's mom's like, well, I always wanted to feel it, and I said I felt it, but I never did, and that's why I could never give in to the Bayan religion. And then they just kind of leave it at that. Mink is eventually found. And as this is going on, like the scares, like this movie's revving up, and like you're just kind of curious like as to how far they're gonna go with this. And when they find Mink like passed out, it kind of cuts to words, and it's like Mink is now fully possessed. And it's like, oh, we're jumping to this already. Now, the physical transition of Mink is super, super impressive. I already said she deserved an award at the beginning, and I will not take that statement back. Because, she goes from like this nice girl to having creepy moments to like, now she's like slack-jawed, and her eyes are rolled in the back of her head. Looks very, very unwell. And it's Nim, Mink's mom, And then there's also another aunt and uncle in the picture that have a baby, and the aunt and uncle are like standing in the room with them, I believe. I'm trying to remember like what all the characters' relevance are. But the uncle, I believe it's the uncle. It's either the uncle or the dad. Either way, it's disturbing. Mink literally like sexually assaults him. Like she tears open her shirt to where her breasts are exposed and makes her uncle touch them. She's just acting berserk. There's this like little urn. She throws up black goo into it. And during this little like moment, like it just again reminded me of The Exorcist. It just very similar. And like you can just feel the movie kind of shifting gears. Like at first we're in this documentary of this girl unraveling, but now we're in the Exorcist territory. And again, like it is just very freaky. It's very well done. There's no hokey pokey bits. She's not climbing on walls or like saying I am Legion. Like it is all just very almost grounded, but it's grounded while slamming on the gas. Very good. But there's a point to where Mink, while she's possessed, she looks at her mom and says, like, Bayan wanted you to be the shaman, but you did everything in your power to make Nim be the shaman. And Nim kind of looks over in the mom's direction, and you can see the guilt on her face. And it's kind of like, oh man, like now there's inner family turmoil. Now, possession movies always kind of creep me out. I don't know, there's just something about them. And like, I feel like not everyone really has a possession story, but I did have a buddy that I went to school with, and there was this girl from another town that he was very infatuated with. And while he was like telling me about her, we during down moments, because again we live in the Midwest. Not a whole lot to do, so we'd hear things are haunted, haunted houses, haunted roads, like we'd go investigate them, at like paranormal investigators or whatever. And like while we'd go out, like it was always for fun. Like I never hoped to find a demon or to see proof of a demon or anything like that. But there was the girl that he was infatuated with, and she claimed that she went to a haunted house, and when she was there, she became possessed. And I guess like her friends like struggled with her, and even when they brought her home, like she was doing weird stuff. And my friend's just like telling me this, and he's like, dude, I might go out on a date with her. And I'm like, why would you want to go on a date with her? And he's like, it'll be fine, dude. Like it was one weird moment. She's fine now. And I'm like, I don't understand, but whatever. Like don't put me, anywhere near her. Well, anyways, one of our friends was having a party, and the party like this was not some rager or anything of that element. Like it literally, I think the friend had a Nintendo 64 and was like, hey, we should all come over and play Mario Party. Well, my friend who was infatuated with the girl, like this guy was always just looking to get into situations. I never understood it, but he's like, hey, you remember that girl? And I was like, oh yeah. And he goes, I think I'm going to bring her to the party. And I was like, oh, okay. And he rode to the party with someone else. They picked up the girl from wherever she lived. And, they're at the party. They're hanging out. It was whatever. Eventually it gets to a point to like where she has to go home. And he goes, hey, dude, would you mind going with me and driving my girl home? And I was like, oh, she needs a ride. And he goes, yeah, would you do that for me? I said, sure, absolutely. So me and another friend, plus the friend with the girl, it's the four of us. We're driving in the car. My friend and the girl, they're in the back seat. Me and the other friend are in the front. I'm driving. The other friend's in the passenger seat. And we're driving, and a puppy runs out onto the road. So I do what any rational person would do, and I hit the brakes. And the girl leans forward and goes, hit the gas, hit it. And I just turn around and I said, what? And she goes, hit it. I'm like, I'm not hitting a puppy. And she's like, no, it's Savage. And I'm like, what? And she goes, no, it's Savage. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she goes, oh, no, it's this game we play. And she goes, you don't know because you're not from the town I live in. Like, the town she lives in is like 20 minutes away. It's not like it's like 3 hours away where the culture's different. It's not in Thailand. And I'm just looking at her, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she goes, no, we play this game to where when you're driving and an animal runs out in front of you, you hit it and then you yell out savage. That's 10 points. And I said, you're making this up. She goes, no, I'm not. And I said, yes, you are. And literally, like, it made me angry at her. It really did. Like, because again, this was a little puppy. Like, why would you even do that? But you know, she's saying like, no, like all animals are game, like cats, dogs, possum, raccoon, and like, you know, it was whatever. I drop her off, and then like I turn around at the friend who's trying to date her, and I was like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, what? And I'm like, why would you want to be around that girl? I'm like, she was possessed, and then she wants to hit animals and scream out savage. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, what? Dude, she's hot. And I'm like, yeah, do you want to end up like Mika from Paranormal Activity? Like, just end up dead one night because of this girl? I don't know, long tangent, but that girl was crazy. Just like Mink. Well, back to the movie. So, with Mink now just going berserk, Nim's like, I need backup. So she calls up a dude who's like a spiritual expert. He comes in, he's looking at Mink, and he's like, yeah. So the seance that you did, since it was interrupted or it didn't go right, Mink was an open void, which left her open to thousands of spirits to where they could get into her and possess her. And he even used the metaphor like, yeah, it's like having a car and leaving your keys inside. You know, anyone could get in and drive. So that's what's going on with Mink. And in the very beginning of the movie, it even says like, there's spirits in literally everything. The trees, plants, animals, people. So, you know, just him saying that, you know, there's a lot of spirits, and it kind of tells you like what's going on. And again, I use the reference of the I Am Legion, and I'm glad they didn't go there because I feel like that's what most movies do when they're like, hey, we need like a really scary demon. How about we like open up the Bible, and when it says Legion is literally like every demon or Satan himself, we will just use that line and that will be scary. You know, it's so overused. You know, it almost comes off as corny to where it's like they literally explain it here like, yeah, there's probably thousands of just foreign spirits inside Mink. So we're going to have to do like a super exorcism to get them all out. It does a good job explaining it, keeps it creepy, and it just kind of plays with your imagination, especially that little detail in the beginning, you know, like what different spirits are inside of her. So this super seance takes like 7 days to prepare for. So it's not like they can just rush off and do it. They're like, yeah, you got to wait 7 days. And while they do that, the film crew's like, hey, we're going to install cameras inside your house because Mink's mom says that every time she wakes up in the morning, the house is a complete mess. And she goes, I think Mink's doing it. And it's like, oh, what a good guess, Mom. So now we're viewing the house from the perspective of the cameras. And literally, it's just like Paranormal Activity. It's like 7 days until the super seance. And then like we're watching day 7, then day 6, day 5, day 4, and it goes all the way up to, you know, the big seance. I'm a big fan of Paranormal Activity. I love the little bits here, and they do extremely well because they just show Mink like lurking in corners. Then she's crawling on all fours. She gets on the kitchen table and just urinates on the table. Just very weird stuff. There was one particular part to where, because it just kept showing her crawl around, there was a part to where the dog was like barking at her, like little fluffy dog, really cute. And you're kind of like, oh, don't do anything to the dog. And while it's doing that, my mind's completely on the dog. Like, oh, I just hope Mink doesn't murder that dog. And then there's a part to where the camera's just sitting there and Mink crawls out of view. And she jumps up onto the camera and like tries to like rip it out of the wall, and she makes like this animal noise while she does it, and man, I jumped like 10 feet. I don't know if you remember the movie The Fourth Kind, where like the guy gets like abducted and his body like levitates and his like chest is like aimed towards the ceiling, but he goes up like 8 feet. That's about what I did when she lurched out at the camera. Very, very good jump scare. Now each night leading up, like the scares just keep getting worse and worse. Like she's going into the people's rooms. She's like climbing on top of her mom, like putting her face an inch from the mom's face. And again, Mink just looks insane while she's doing it. There's the baby that's in the house of the aunt and uncle. And there's even a part to where like the uncle's like, maybe we should move out. And when he said that, that was the sanest thing I've heard throughout the entire movie. I was like, dude, good for you. Go. And Mink's mom's kind of like, well, if you want to move out, that's fine, but I care for Mink, so I'm going to stay here. And it was just, I know there's Mink's mom. I believe there was Mink's dad, too. I'm having trouble. I feel like I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between the uncle and the dad. So I might be conflating them all into one character when they're two separate characters. But whether it be Mink's dad or Mink's uncle, like Mink's dad, you probably expect him to stay there. Mink's uncle and his wife and the baby, they should not have been in the house. They should have left a long time ago. And it's just dumb for them to stay. I don't. They're like putting locks on the door, and they're like, "That'll keep Mink out." It's like, dude, are you kidding me? Well, since they all decide to stay, like the climax of the paranormal activity section of the movie, Mink literally takes the little dog, and there's like a pot of boiling water, and she like boils the dog alive. Very unfortunate. I believe the dog's name was Lucky, which this dog was not very lucky. But after that, as if that is not bad enough, she goes into the aunt and uncle's room and kidnaps the baby. And now, like, we go into a full, like, it's almost like Blair Witch Project, because everyone's now searching for Mink and the baby. And the entire time, we're like, please don't let her kill the baby. Come on. And, like, by this point, like, you've already seen Mink sexual assault the uncle, boil a dog alive. Like, there's not much left on the kitchen table that they haven't done. So it's like they probably would kill the baby. Like, this is a definite possibility. But eventually they're searching, and there's a part to where the baby's like laying in a cornfield or something like that. Probably not a cornfield, but some type of field. And at first you only see the baby's head. And at first I was like, oh no, she decapitated the baby. But she didn't. The baby was still alive. But Mink does come out of the field and she attacks a cameraman. And it's getting to this point in the movie. I'm like, maybe they should just old yeller Mink. I like Mink a lot. She seemed to have a very bright future. I know Nim is preparing the super seance, and the mom was very optimistic that the seance was going to work. But things are way beyond getting out of hand. This is just full-blown chaos. If I'm the aunt and uncle, and I found my baby finally, I'm leaving. I don't care how well you like your niece. You get out of there. You take whatever money you have and you leave. Because like again, this is just too much. Like Mink's like running around with kitchen knives. Clearly super dangerous. She's acting like animals. And again, the girl who plays her does a fantastic job. I'll probably say that 4 more times by the time I finish this review. But that was probably the best part of this film, was just seeing the actress like do these different facial expressions and contortions. So impressive. So by this point, we're like a day before the super seance is going to happen. And they're like, oh, we should double check with Nim. Like, she's been doing a lot of, preparing, and it shows scenes of her preparing the seance. But whenever they go to her house, and Nim is kind of the figure in the movie that seems like the guide or the expert, at least before she pulls in the spiritual expert. So then you have 2 experts. But, she was always kind of the protective figure, like Mink's mom is not the one I would choose to protect me. She's just like blindly following Mink because she loves her daughter. I get it. I get that. But I did not feel safe around Mink's mom. Nim, at least she seemed to kind of know what she was doing. She knew to look for bad omens. And there's just like various plot points in this movie that Nim sniffs out because of her experience, her expertise. But they go to her house and they're like, yeah, we wonder how it's going to be. And Nim died. Nim dies in her sleep. And before this point, I know I said she's the protective figure and she's uncovering all these things. But I had just watched The Wailing. And The Wailing, like, I won't spoil its ending, but it gets to a point to where you don't know who to trust. So as I'm watching this movie, and I know it's the same director, In my head, I'm like, I don't trust Nim. And I kept telling the friends I was watching this, I'm like, guys, I'm going to call it right now. Nim is the bad one. Like, this whole entire thing is Nim's fault. She's doing this to pull the family into the Bayan religion, and that's what's going to be the big reveal. And then it showed that she died in her sleep. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, I was wrong. So that was very surprising to see when the movie still had like 40 minutes left or 50 minutes left, whatever it was. Now the spiritual expert, he's like, listen, we've prepared the super seance, whether we have Nim or no Nim, we move on, we do this. Mink's mom's like, yeah, I agree 100%. Even though, like, deep down, if you're watching this and if you watch any horror movie ever, like, this is just like the starting of, everything falling out of control and where it's all going to end badly. The expert, like, they're talking about him. They're like, oh, how do you think this is going to be? And he uses this expression like, well, it's a red seance, and he kind of like smiles and laughs. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then it cuts to the car traveling, and the car had a sign that said, this car is red, but the car was actually blue, which I think is just some type of metaphor for the seance they're about to do. Because the person in the car with the bag over their head, you would think it was Mink, but really it's Mink's mom. And whenever they do this ceremony, like, they have all these like cattle and stuff. There's a bunch of like people working on the ceremony with the expert. The expert is leading it. They're doing all these different things. But in a completely different room, Mink is locked up. And there's a bunch of like spiritual signs that's keeping her at bay. And who they have watching over Mink is there's one guard, there's a cameraman, and there's the aunt and uncle with their baby. And it's kind of like, man, like, the aunt and uncle just went through this big PTSD, like, horrible thing with Mink. And you're going to, like, lead them in charge to watch over her, which maybe some of the rationale would be like, well, she took your baby, so don't let her out. Like, that would probably be the rationale, which might be good rationale. But, the ceremony starts going, and Mink tricks the aunt and uncle. You hear a baby crying inside the room that she's staying in. And when you hear that, you're kind of like, oh, don't fall for it. The aunt looks into the cradle, and she starts freaking out and starts saying, the baby isn't there, the baby isn't there. It's in the room, we have to go in there. The uncle's arguing with her. The cameraman walks over. Camera goes into the cradle, and you see the baby in there just sleeping. And in your head, you're yelling at the cameraman. You're like, dude, tell her there's a baby in the cradle. And like, he just like looks at the baby, looks at the aunt, looks at the baby, looks at the aunt, does not say anything. And the aunt freaking opens up the door. Once she opens up the door, Mink is there. And of course there's no baby in there because the cameraman didn't say anything, but the baby's just chilling in the cradle. Mink immediately kills the aunt. The uncle hides in a closet, and when he peeks out... No, I got it wrong. The uncle gets killed also. The cameraman, I believe, goes into the closet. When he peeks out, Mink is eating the baby. And like, this movie, like, it goes so many places. It is not afraid to cross the line whatsoever. Back at the super seance, the guy who's leading it, the spiritual expert, ends up like committing suicide. And there's a part to where Mink's mom all of a sudden turns super creepy, like she's possessed, and she starts saying that she sees Bayan is leading her, and she instructs all the people working on the ceremony that they need to continue. Well, she starts instructing them to do the seance, but she starts instructing them to do it wrong. They call her out on it, and she goes, no. Bayan's talking to me. We have to do it this way. So they start doing the seance wrong, which leads to literally like half or 6/10 of the people doing the ceremony to become possessed. And man, it turns into a bloodbath. Because when they become possessed, again, the spiritual stuff, like there's spirits of animals and all that stuff. So like they're running around like ravenous zombies. They're eating people. There's cameramen that are being eaten. By this point in the movie, this section, it goes full on like wreck territory. It's intense. There's blood everywhere. And it's just like action packed with creepiness. Minx like strutting around, looks super evil with this gigantic smile. It literally reminds me of the movie Smile, how well they do the smiles to be creepy. Minx doing this to full extent. Members of the seance are doing the same exact thing. Mink's mom's doing the creepy smile. It was all super well done, and by the end, Mink's mom sees Mink and she's like, "Oh, I could see Bayan, like I can help like cure you." But then Bayan leaves her. And when she leaves her, she becomes very afraid, and Mink is possessed, smiling all crazy, douses her in gasoline, and lights her on fire. Now, the movie ends at this point, but they have a post-credit scene that I think is very, very good. And it cuts to Nim. And she's talking to a cameraman, and she just seems like she's off. This was when she was preparing the Super Seance. And he like asked her like what's going on, and she admits that she's now questioning her faith to Bayan, which leads to why she died in her sleep. Like she lost her faith, she lost her reason to live, the pressure was too great, and she passed away. There's a lot of people that theorize that she committed suicide. I don't really think that's the case. I think, this is just kind of a case of like when Padme died of a broken heart in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Mink died of broken faith. she didn't know if she could trust Bayan anymore. She didn't know if he was real. And I think that's just like a common theme in this movie is like faith and how strong your belief is in your faith. It was like kind of a theme in The Wailing also, which there's a lot of similarities in the two movies. But I thought this movie was better than The Wailing. I'll just leave it at that point. Because there's just some parts in The Wailing, while I enjoyed it a lot, I felt like it was a little bloated sometimes, to where this movie, even though it is kind of longer, I don't know, I enjoyed it. Like I felt like it went by fast. There was really no down moments in this movie, and like it's all beautifully shot, just like The Wailing was. Like there's nothing that I look at The Wailing and I'm like, oh, I like how they did that better than they did in The Medium. I thought this was just a better overall movie, which is it surprises me because The Wailing is usually the film that gets all the acclaim and the hype, to where I don't really hear that many people talk about this movie. I looked up some thoughts online just to see like what other people thought. A lot of other people, they're kind of saying the same things like I was saying, that they thought this was very scary, very good. The only criticisms that I've seen online is some said that they didn't like the end. They said they thought it was like too fast for what this movie was doing. They liked the beginning when it was slower. And I kind of just disagree completely, because they hint at it. They were hinting at, like animal spirits being in people and stuff like that. And they kind of committed to it by the time we were in the Paranormal Activity Act with the cameras in the corner. So to me, like it makes sense. Like movies usually have a climax at the end. And if you're looking for some artsy-fartsy type film to where, like, let's slow it back down and have an ending to where, like, you're questioning everything. I didn't want that from this movie. Because, like, this movie, it starts off as a slow burn, but then, like, creepy things happen. And then she becomes possessed, and it becomes creepier. And then we put cameras in the house, and now it's a lot more intense. And now she's on the run with a baby, like holding a knife, and we're chasing her down, and now we got to do this big ceremony. And I don't know, like I just thought this movie, like they nailed it. I thought it was perfect. I love the bits where the people are possessed, acting like animals, crawling on all fours, eating people. So that makes me feel really weird to say that. But I don't know, I thought they knocked it out of the park, and I thought the end was fantastic. I like the movie Wreck. I like intense scariness. And I thought this movie pulled off that card very well, while incorporating the exorcism parts and the paranormal activity parts, just combining them all into one by the very end, to where Like literally that seance like turned into complete hell. And that's how I felt watching it. Like it was just pure chaos. And it was fantastic. Overall, like this, I think this is just one of my favorite movies. Like I don't know, like this movie just seemed really up my alley for whatever reason. I found it just very unsettling. It didn't scare me as much as Incantation did. Like if there was a mountain of scariness, to where like Incantation's like on top and like Hereditary's like chilling on top with it. This movie's probably like clinging on like a tier below that. I found it very scary, very unsettling, and I think if you watch it at night, it could keep you up at night. But it just didn't quite hit that Incantation level for me. But still, very, very solid film, and I love the characters. I love the scary bits, and again, the girl who played Mink should win an Academy Award for the complete transformation from a nice businesswoman who sits at a desk to a little kid to possessed and barely functional to like this big evil demon lady who's smiling like she's in the movie Smile. It was awesome. And then here's the thing that kind of just, I don't know, horror tends to get a bad rep in terms of like awards and stuff. Like recently the movie Sinners like won every award. Like for the Emmys, I think like it like broke a record for how many awards that it won. Which, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Sinners a lot. Do I think Sinners is a perfect film? No, I do not. I think that Sinners was a very awesome movie. Michael B. Jordan knocked it out of the park along with the rest of the cast. It was very fun. The musical bits were nice. It was a good timepiece film. I think when it gets to like the scary bits to where the final confrontation with the vampires, it gets like a little out there. And it's a pretty solid movie. But I just wish like a movie like this, like a random movie from Thailand, could get a little notice on awards night. It never would. It just never would. I feel like the people that give out the awards to those things, like whenever it comes to horror, I feel like those people don't watch these types of films. So they would never see the girl who plays Mink and they're like, oh my gosh, like look at her now. Like she looks insane. And give an award to her for that. Like if it's a horror film that's going to win an award, it's going to be something that's like half and half style like Sinners was, where it's like a timepiece, with like some messaging behind it, and then they're going to be like, oh, like since it had messaging and it's a timepiece, we're going to incorporate it into the awards program. We'll give it a bunch of awards and we'll say, yeah, we really watch horror and we get it. I don't know. Long rant, but I just, like when I watch a film like this that's really well done, I don't know, I just wish it would get the flowers it deserves. It was nice seeing a movie like Godzilla -1 get awards. Like, that was very nice. Not the standard U.S. movie, that tends to get it. That movie's a fantastic movie. But I wish a movie like this would just get a little, I don't know, recognition. Because it definitely deserved it. This was a very well done movie. I've been going on, and I'm at 43 minutes talking about this movie nonstop. It's a very solid movie. If you haven't seen it and you've listened to me, even though I spoiled the crap out of it and talked about what's going on throughout this entire film, if you're still like, oh, that does sound kind of good, watch it. Watch it. It's so good. So good. For anything, just to see how the main girl does as Mink. You gotta see it. If you like films like The Exorcist or, The Last Exorcism, or really any movie with an exorcism in it, I think this girl gives all of them a run for their money. Like, just my opinion. Very well done. Well, I'll quit rambling about the girl who played Mink, which, by the way, just a little tidbit, because I listened to a little thing on this because I was very fascinated with this movie. And the people talking about it, I believe they said the girl who played Mink is in association with the band Pink. So there's that. Like, if you listen to that music by the band Pink, I believe she's like a dancer for them. So that's cool. This girl's got a lot going for her. So hopefully she gets more roles in horror, because she did a great job with that. So I'll leave it at that. Fantastic movie for the medium. Really glad I covered it. It was a nice little surprise. And hopefully, whenever we cover a new movie that I haven't seen, it's as big of a surprise as this movie was. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. Tell me what you thought about it. And if you really liked it, tell me which part you thought that was scariest, because I feel like there's a lot of just small parts that could just, oh, I thought the beginning was the scariest. Oh, I thought the cameras in the house was. Oh, I thought the end was. Like, depending who you are, it probably changes from person to person. If you didn't like it, tell me why. If you could give this episode a like, because it gets it out to other people, it would help the podcast out a lot, and I would appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Again, thank you so much for listening, and until next time.